Do what do. I'm just gonna keep it real. Y'all can bump that rap. I'm Gucci. So this is about the Levirate marriage. I don't want anybody to think that because it says Levi, it's having to do with the priest or thing. I mean, maybe the priests are named after this, or Levi was named after this. But like circumcision, this goes way back. This is at least a Hurrian custom, as Abraham didn't go the way across Jordan. Abraham went up the river and then down the other river. And so they had all stopped up there. There was his dad, Terah, and he had some brothers and sisters. One of which had 7 sons. I think it was his brother Micah had 7 sons, and I think his other brother Nahor had Lot. And I can't remember who's older. Let's say Micah was the oldest, and then Nahor, and then Abraham's dad. No, Terah was Abraham's dad. So then you have Abraham. So you have these 3 brothers. Well, if Micah had these 7 sons, these 7 sons died, and we can see this in Maccabees. There's the woman that had the 7 sons, and other places in the Bible, this reoccurring theme. And so this is about mourning and all that. But this means that Lot would need to have children, and so would Abraham, because this idea of blessing back then had to do with how many children you had. So the ultimate reward of temptation for Abraham was to have lots of children. And in this time, they believed women were conspiring just to have children. And because of malnutrition and everything, I think they really thought it was hard to have children or something. And people, women would go their whole lives not have any, and certain women. And Lot would end up having children who are just called in the same way as Abraham said, a son born in my house. Like this Benny, this means, it doesn't have to mean son, because like Abraham's son of Damascus, Eliezer of Damascus, I mean, if you look at the chapter right before that, they had taken a bunch of captives from Damascus and beyond, or around there. And so Bimni is what when you see Ammonites in the Bible, if you look at the Hebrew, often it just says Bimni, my sons. And this is because this was crucial for Abraham's inheritance, because Abraham had a role to fill in having children, because the 7 sons of Micah, his brother, had passed away. And this was a lot of responsibility for Abraham, because he might have wanted, if Sodom and Gomorrah was populated once upon a time, it would be as much as Masada would have been, maybe. I don't know that one side of the Dead Sea is incredibly fertile versus another side until once upon a time. I don't know if there's any evidence to that being true. But nonetheless, Abraham would want Lot to go to a promiscuous city, because if he's going to have children of his own name in Levirate marriage, it would be if he didn't have to have them in his brother's name. So let me try to explain this by going off. Let me go off on a tangent here to try to explain this. it has a lot to do with economics and the dynasties of families. So a lot of this is making do with what you have. I mean, when one brother dies, the other brothers might have more to do for that missing brother, but it's all within reason. So let me try to demonstrate. There's this guy born in on the 16th of July, 1658. That's 1658. His name was Leopold I, Holy Roman Emperor Leopold. And his issue was first a daughter, and then he had a son. But his son, Joseph, won. So Leopold's son, Joseph, they were both Holy Roman Emperors, big position, big powdered wigs, big suits of armor, and all that. So he had the son, Joseph. Well, Joseph died of like smallpox or something. And so this guy, Charles VI, who was, several children later, there's a lot of girls in there. The same's true for like Henry VIII, and that's how the Stuart family, I think, got to be monarch, is by marrying into the fact that there was a queen mother. And so here's Charles VI, born 1685. And he was the younger brother of Joseph. And then if you read down here on the Wikipedia page, it says he had 3 daughters. And it says when Maria Theresa was born in 1717, that was his first daughter. He disinherited his nieces and daughters of his elder brother Joseph, Maria Josepha, and Maria Amelia. And so it's seeming that this has a little part to do with it, and that is Abraham's part, where Abraham, as the younger brother, and of course this is like my last video, in line with Tim Mackey and John Collins of Bible Project. They're doing a whole series on the firstborn, and they're getting way ahead of me, so I just want to hurry up and get this in and move on. So Abraham was a giant. That's how they saw these men of renown of the Gentile nations. And so he was separated out from there to go meet God in God's homeland, I guess. And so here we go. So you can go to these early Jewish sources. I'm talking like 3rd century BC. And that's incredibly early in terms of actual factual evidence. People love to say, oh, Isaiah, that was 9th, 8th century. Good luck proving that. And so this early Jewish source mentioned in Maccabees, said that Abraham was a giant. He might seem like the meekest most sheepish person in the world. That's because he was a stranger. And so that has a lot to do with this fear and trust and things like this, which are huge concepts in the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, it was supposed to be don't trust any man except and to just walk by God's path. Well, guess what? There was a priest, and this priest gave benedictions, and these benedictions is where Israel's blessing came from. And so that's how their atonement and everything came through these priests. But these priests existed before there was an Israel, and they established Israel, especially after the Hyksos were kicked out of Egypt. And so, but this isn't Jewish. Jewish comes from Ezra and then the Deuteronomists from Babylon. And so here we go. So there's these two different nations, Israel and Judah, and they were hardly ever in league with one another. And under the time of Solomon, they were. But under the time of Solomon, this is influence of the nations. He was influenced by the nations, and this is why the kingdom was disbanded. This is not true of his father, David. David was a small person. He was not a giant. And that's because he was from the dirty South. And that's where Idumea is. And just like Adam and Edom, that's what his name means. So, okay, I'm going to explain that to you because I keep on talking about it, and I'm about to be about it. But I'm right here turned to Genesis 48 because I want to show you something. So let me do that before I go there. So here in Genesis 48, it's talking about Joseph. In verse 19, it says, and his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Howbeit his younger brother, that's Ephraim. Ephraim is Jacob. Jacob is Israel. That's the northern kingdom, including Jeroboam and Ahab and lots of wickedness up there. And so that's what the story of Cain is about in the new song. This is even expropriated in Revelation chapter maybe 6, a new song. This new song is the Jewish song, the Psalms, the Psalms. This is what Solomon and David, this is their dynasty. It's not the dynasty of Saul. Saul was a Benjaminite, and we see in Judges how the Benjaminites sinned. But Benjamin is of the loved mother, Rachel, where Judah is of the hated mother. And because she's hated, this is where Esau is, the hated one. He was hated for no reason. He's hated by his mother. He was disinherited. That's what Canaan is. So when I say that Cain is the nations, I'm talking about in the revolution that is Solomonic, Davidic, and this is based on the piousness of not going the way of idolatry as much as they did, and for the amount that they did, going into exile. And this exile is like the baptism, the temptation, all that kind of stuff. But it's not Israel. There was an original Israel story before the Jewish story. And so this is true even for Abraham. Abraham was a Gentile before ever there was a covenant. And that is who he got formed out of. They took him out of the nations and made him into a people. And so every time they talk about evil, it's the nations, it's the surrounding people. The word, every time they talk about the devil and all that, they're talking about the king of Tyre. Well, guess what Tyre means? It means stranger, outsider. When they talk about Goliath and the giants, guess what Goliath means? Stranger, outsider. When they talk about Edom, that means stranger, outsider. And it's because that's Adam got kicked out of the garden. But Adam is really the firstborn. And so whenever they talk about the firstborn in Ezekiel 23 and the prodigal son, whatever that is, Luke 15, I can't remember, you're going to see that these firstborn are really the Jewish people, who is Esau, the firstborn. And so, therefore, Cain is actually the story of Esau, the hunter, as you have a shepherd people. And so these shepherd people are not going to be the settled people, and the settled people are the ones that have the farms where they grow crops. Well, those people weren't safe from the Phoenicians, and the Phoenicians destroyed the Israelites that lived there. But the history won't tell you that. They'll tell you that there were Philistines there already, and I mean the biblical history. There was Philistines there already, and Israel came up out of there and destroyed them from the east side, destroyed the Canaanites. Well, really what happened was the original Israelites were destroyed by, and Egypt and everybody were destroyed by the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians were all over the Mediterranean. We say the boats. And this is like Solomon, this is why he was kind of wicked, because he was getting these monkeys and this gold from Tyre. Well, Tyre is actually the Saudi Ra, and that means evil from the outside. And so the only way they thought they could be true blue to have the Messiah would be to have a jingoistic kind of ghetto society, where in this ghetto, in this walled city, no one's getting in and out. And this isn't really what they started as, the Shasu people, the ones that couldn't be along the coast because of the sea people, but it's what they ended up being. And when they went into the necropolis of Jerusalem and removed all the sarcophaguses and made it like their temple, that was something that happened later on. And especially like right before the time of the Maccabees and stuff like that, in the time of so-called Ezra. And that makes a change of everything, because it used to be that the firstborn was disinherited and he got, the outskirts and stuff like that, had to be wandering in exile. Well, lo and behold, in the Davidic kind of framework, in the Messianic framework, in the new song, you're going to have the firstborn position going to be reinstated, and that's going to be in this zero-sum game at the expense of the nations. So that's what Ezra is going to do, is he's going to say, And Nehemiah is going to say to the king of Persia, "Oh, we really need walls. We really need walls. Don't let anybody in here but us," and all of that. But they really protest too much because it ends up being very cyclical. And so when Lot had his kids, Abraham was able to have things in his own name, and he makes this people. Well, this people end up being a replacement people, because that's what the Bible is telling you in chapters 4 and 5 is like of Genesis. It's like, well, there was this guy Cain who had to make children for his brother, and that's why God kept him alive, was for some purpose. And the Hyksos were apparently tyrants, because you see Lamech saying, "Oh, if you hit me one time, I'm going to hit you 77 times," and feel justified, kind of self-righteous like that. And this represents the law. It's like, by destroying the evil, then you can somehow reinstate your position. It's like, oh, I was such a hungry boy once upon a time, and I stole a candy bar. But if I cut my hand off, Dad, can I have the fatted lamb and stuff like that? And so it became a religion about sacrifice and affliction, because after the exile, which wasn't really an exile, because there were many people exiled from many unknown places. But it's really the story of King Herod, because when King Herod came into power, he was of the exiles, and he was from the south. And he's going to say, well, I'm the king of the Jews, and all the Jewish people, they fell into line. They weren't rebelling during the Pax Romana. And, well, guess who lost their position? The Sadducees and the Maccabees. You don't see as much of them after that, especially when the Idumeans, especially when the Herods fled and the Idumeans came in and sieged the temple for 3.5 years for the Roman war after the Sicaries did off with the last of the priests. So that's what the Jewish story is. It's like, well, we were, John Hyrcanus already circumcised us. It's 3 generations later. What the heck? Why aren't you letting us in anymore? You guys are still ruling the whole priesthood. Well, here we go. Because my dad and his dad and then his dad and his dad and Ezra proved it. Blah, blah, blah. Well, it's going to change now, because I grew my hair out. I didn't drink any alcohol. You thought that the god of Idumea was the god of wine. So there was this idea back then that women were powerful. Look at Solomon. Alcohol's powerful. You can talk about the cup of staggering and wealth and money and all that. Look at Solomon. I mean, Solomon's probably getting drunk, eat, drink, and be merry, the dude said. Well, he fell, right? And so, I mean, he set up his temple like in Olivet. And that's why when Jesus goes to Olivet, where they put all the lepers, he was doing the priest's job. But this is Esau the priest, the Gentiles. Because when even though Cain is Esau, the Jewish people, that when the new song came, it was a reversal of everything. Now, the Israelites are the ones that are cast out, and says, "His seed shall become a multitude of nations." And then they all get diffused in. So anybody that comes back, these are all nations. And then the firstborn gets his place back. And that's how it was in the Second Temple period. So in the Second Temple period, Cain is Israel. You know, they got demons, and look at John 8. It says, "Oh, it's true. You got a demon in you, and you're a Samaritan." And Jesus is like, "I don't have a demon in me." And he's talking to Samaritans, and they were following him, and his disciples were like, "Should we call rain down from heaven like Elijah?" And remember in Ezra 4, he's like, "No, I'm not going to have no Samaritans here. They'll have no part in the world to come." And it's like, well, that's how, like, Judah stole their name then, and they stole their name in 1948, like, because they wanted the Samaritans to join. So that was concession. It's like in the Second Temple period, they wouldn't even let them join. They were playing hardball, but they actually were able to take the name Israel and appropriate it by including the Samaritans in their nation. And they were hoping a lot of the Arabs would convert to Judaism, and then it would all be bygones anyways if the Messianic age was happening. And this is where you get revisionists like Jabotinsky trying to force it to happen. That's political revisionism. Then you have literary revisionism, which is people like Greats who rewrite history to say that a biblical narrative, so to speak, but not seeing that the Bible is past and trying to apply it to their time. And they still do that. Oh, Persia is trying to wipe us off the face of the earth. So I'm in Numbers. So this is what I'm going to show you. I'm in Numbers. They always do this, and like in Zechariah, where there's a big shift in everything you're about to see. Here in my subsidized abridged JPS, they put a bunch of, who are your mother, who your father, what's their family tree, and this is a time of the destruction of the Second Temple in Zechariah. But right here, they put it in Numbers 20, right before Numbers 24. Numbers 24 is there's a lot. There's a lot. But if I could just go through some of it real quick. And this is a prophecy from God. It says, "What the Lord speaketh, that will I speak." And this is what happened to them in the end of days. So when it says here in verse 17, "There shall step forth a star out of Jacob, a scepter shall arise out of Israel," we know that this is the end of days of the Second Temple, in my opinion. So at the end of days, it says here in verse 14 of Numbers 24, at the end of days, meaning the end of the Second Temple. So that's when the resurrection happened. I'm not saying I'm a full preterist. I believe that the Bible is saying that this dispensation of law had an end of days in 70 AD, but the dispensation of grace has yet to have its fulfillment and its resurrection. But it's a different covenant. Who was inside the bubble became outside, just like it had been done before. It's going to go in a cycle and a cycle and a cycle and a cycle. Is how this is written into it in the zero-sum game. And the Romans were playing this game when they tried to defeat the Jewish angle by writing in a plausible thesis that uses their own concepts, like the concepts of the Deuteronomist. And so here we go. It says he took up a parable, and these parables mean like very counterintuitive. Like you think you're going one way and you're going the other way, but only the wise can know. And the wisdom comes from the snake, but the snake is evil. So you have this, but the snake is like the seraphim, like it's in the presence of God. You know, the devil meets up with God in the book of Job. But people like Duvid have it twisted because they'll try to have you believing that, oh, well, this guy, he's way up there, devil up there, and Duvid bumping that rat. He'll be like, oh, you know, this, he'll use the Deuteronomist angle, the Jewish angle, and apply it to every book of the Bible, and it's just not true. The book of Job is about how all these people think that life is fair, and it's really not. This is the capriciousness of their God to the wiles of the devil is the theme of the book of Job and the rest of them. And so this is why God was tested in Matthew 4, Luke 4, Mark chapter 2 or something. There's a verse at the end. But I think it was chapter 1. And so you know, this is when we get into John 8. It was because these people were blind. That's what they're saying happened to the Canaanites. That's what they're saying happened to the Israelites. That's what they're saying happened to everybody else. That, oh, Pharaoh, look at him, he's blind, and God made him blind because God believes that this is how it should be. If you apply the same logic, well, what happened in 70 AD? They were blind to Jesus's message, where he was allowing the tax collector and stuff in there. He wasn't big hard up on the law. He was more like Hillel, you know, more chill, you know what I mean? And you know, they wanted to crucify him. So he's saying, when they say his blood be on us and our children, that them and their children were still there in 70 AD. And then the punishment's done. And then you get in these ideas of like, oh, you know, the wandering who, you know, this person that has no home and they have to be part of your society. Well, this was happening even before that. This is the narrative of the Persian narrative that's not corroborated in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where you got a temple here in Jerusalem, but you still got exiles out here meddling by marrying the king and of some Persian country way out, you know, world empire. I mean, because this is all this. Do you know what the Pharisees were? There was a big war. There was war for decades and decades, a million, like the whole time, the whole periphery, the whole hitherto society had really culminated and continued to culminate in this East versus West that really was divided around that time. So the Persians aren't going to let the Maccabees go. We always hear about the Romans, you know, the Romans going to like be meddling in their affairs, and you know, you don't think the Parthians, you know, had their hands in this thing? So that's this lesson is like Israel is saying, oh, because we went through it in the desert. I'm not talking about the slavery in Egypt. I don't believe there's 400 years of slavery or anything like that. Because we went through it in the desert. That's the story of Israel and Cain. and how he had to set up a nation, and have his a destiny. Well, here's a different story from people from Babylon who are saying, look at John 8, we were never slaves to anybody. We were never slaves to anybody. They're not Israel. Judah is not Israel. Jesus never called them Israel. I mean, all of the book of Kings, like, just look through it. It's Israel versus Judah. And the outlook is totally different. And so just because they use their name now and conflate them doesn't mean that's what that means in the Bible. Two sticks. And so in this zero-sum game where the outsider is evil and, Israel's evil, Judah saying, well, we inherit the land. We might have lost it once upon a time, but we inherit it now. So now they're in the firstborn. The prodigal son's out eating slop, and the firstborn's in the house with like fine things. And then the servant says, then the prodigal son says, the wayward son says, well, I would rather be a servant in my father's house than in this slop. And so he gets reinstated. And that's what it's saying about Joseph. He will become a multitude of nations. He's going to bring everybody in. And this is what Jesus represents. Jesus represents, oh yeah, he went through it. He went through the temptation, and he's going to be a light to the nations through his holy apostles and all that. And so, but this is against people. The second temple, the Jewish perspective is against. That's why it says in Colossians 2:16 or whatever, this handwriting of ordinance to you are against you. That's why we're even in Numbers 24, is because the prophecy was against Moab and Midian and all them up in the northeast. It was like Balak and all them were going to get messed up. And there you can even find evidence that Moab and all them and Midians and all them, they had a prophecy. And it was very revolutionary because the priest gets paid by the dynasty and supported by the dynasty. I mean, Herod's palace was right next to the priest's, sanctuary. And so here's Balaam doing this because an angel made him. But this angel is the devil because it's against him. So the devil made him do it. The devil made him so he can't lie. Just like the Judean prophet couldn't lie to Ahab. In I think 1 Chronicles 18, we went over that. And so it says, he shall smite through the corners of Moab. Well, Moab is an inheritance for Abraham to have his inheritance, because Lot's children fulfill his obligation. So Cain can be out there in the Judean desert, the wilderness of sin, while there's still a replacement person, Seth. And it says, and he shall break down the sons of Seth. So this is against Seth. This is Cain in the one that's cast out. So, but this is while they were, they didn't have the inheritance. But when they get the inheritance, after they go through the Jordan River, well, guess what? Then they get the inheritance. And then they're the blessed. They're the firstborn. I mean, you say that people could say that about America. I certainly wouldn't, but Where do all these European people come from? There's as many as the dang on stars in the sand. Well, because there's a land. And with land, there's water and food and all that. There's probably buffalo once upon a time. And so they ate it, and they started a population spike. And and shall break down the sons of Seth. That's verse 17. And Adam shall be a possession. That's mankind. That's mankind. That's the Gentiles. But at this time, it was the Gentiles that were saying that because they're the ones cast out. Edom, the firstborn, was lost his inheritance, is cast out. So here it says, well, this. So when Israel becomes the one cast out, when they become Cain, then they're going to be a possession. They're going to possess all mankind. Because Israel, when they go out to the nations, they lose their identity and it becomes synonymous. The ones outside are the evil ones, the giants, the ones that are cast out, the ones that hate us, but God hates them. And so it says, and seer, this is seer, that means the outsider. Seer, the outsider, even his enemies shall be a possession, while Israel doeth valiantly. So in this time, in this Judaic time, they're going to steal the name Israel. They're going to say, we're Israel, and we replace, this is replacement theology. In the new song, we were outside, exiled, but the Messiah, Cyrus, put us in place, and now we're the protectors of the vineyard. And out of Jacob shall one have dominion. And this Jacob is when, as the messianic age comes in their last days, this one out of Jacob, this is Jesus Christ. This is, yes, he is from a family of Bethlehem, but this isn't his family. He is really representing the interest of the Romans. So he is seen as a son of Judea, but that's not what he represents. He represents Israel, which is the nations. And so they think they're seeing the line of David, but they're not. They're seeing the victim of the line of David, the lamb. And so the only way you can understand this is through replacement theology, that when one suffers at the hands of another, that's the ultimate kill shot, because that's what the Muslims are doing. They're saying, oh, if we die enough to your Western hedonism, then we're going to have the upper hand because everyone's going to look at us as the victim. I mean, even Alamo, before the Alamo, they wouldn't even have Texas. But the Alamo was a victory of the Mexicans. So how does that work? Well, because they weren't kind to the people in the Alamo, the Mexicans weren't kind to the people in the Alamo, that turned everyone's opinion against the Mexican army. So it was a big mistake for them to violate conduct rules in the Alamo, because they created these American kind of martyrs, like, I can't remember their names, Davy Crockett or something, for all I know. And this suffering servant idea. And so this is what Jesus is saying. He's saying, suffer these 77 slaps. Lamech thinks, oh, you hit me? I'll slap you back 77 times. You kill my son? I'll kill 77 of your sons. Jesus is saying, that's how many times you got to forgive for this to stop. But it kept going because they were out for blood. They wanted Jesus to pay, the adulterous woman to pay, so the law is honored. But the law is at the expense of the mercy that was given them to save their lives and restore their position. And so it's hypocritical, and because it's hypocritical, it's not truth. So this is what they're saying in First Esdras about wine, women, and bowling, and all those fun things. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. It's all futile. It's all fickle. And so this is the concupiscence of God to the devil, and the capriciousness of his whims. And so because of this, something became greater. Truth. This is the theme, truth. And this comes through the priest and his benediction, because he's the snake on the pole. In Numbers, you have to look at the Messiah in the eyes. So when Jesus said in John 3, I'm the snake on the pole, it means that he is the window to God, that we can see the divine. And this comes through suffering others out of love and charity, something that this zero sum is missing. And so he shall destroy the remnant of the city, and that's what they do. Haman can't be from Amalek because they do destroy all them. Herod can't be from some supposed Edomia because they destroyed all them. There is no male seed. It happened time and time again. It says it right in the Bible. I can show you in First Samuel, maybe First Kings, about First Samuel, and or Second Samuel rather. And so I mean, it's really pointless. So look at the. So I'm just going to wrap up. It says, so he looked on Amalek and took up this parable and said, Amalek was the first of nations, but his end shall come in destruction. So Amalek has now become the Gentiles, because it means the evil one, the outsider, that will be destroyed and be a possession. And this happens through the small person, David. But that's how you need to think of it. Even though Saul killed the king, Saul was lenient. It was David who killed the thousands. And he did that through being a special ops double agent. And he had to, no fault to his, because he was out on the lam and fleeing from the king that he respected. And so David is the story of Judah. It's, the priests were really indulgent. So here I go. I'm going to be a better thing for you. I'm going to, make sacrifice, give lives in honor of God and Thanksgiving. But he's going to fail out of his own lust, his family getting too big, problems and disputes among his children, and his infidelities and stuff. I mean, God still loved him. He's a man after his own heart, but he's kind of a tragic figure in a way. And it says, and he looked upon the Kenite, and he took up this parable, and though firm be thy dwelling, and though the nest be in the rock, nevertheless Cain shall be wasted. So Cain is the Kenite, who is the Canaanite, who is Esau, the cursed one, Amalek. But when they take their identity, they're going to apply these terms, because these are just terms. So the firstborn is a term. It means the preeminent one, the chosen one. And words like Kimnite mean the hated one. So Caleb was Joshua's dog, in terms of rank. It goes, sheriff Joshua, deputy Caleb, and but Caleb is Judah, and Caleb is like a Kenite and a Kenizzite. And if you look at the prophecies of Abraham, Israel's never supposed to get their dwelling when you compare them to other prophecies. They're not always in there. Like Abraham's children are going to get the possession of the Kenites and Kenizzites, but Israel's never supposed to. If you go to the, later children of Abraham, you look at the promises to like Jacob or somebody, I don't know, one of his children, he's not supposed to get it. And so there's lots of this. It says, took up this parable, alas, shall live after God hath appointed him, but ships shall come from the coast of Kittim. This is the sea. This is Greece. So they're talking about like Alexander the Great, and they shall afflict Ashur. There's no Syrians anymore, and they shall afflict Eber. There was the whole region became Greek. The whole region became Greek in the time of Alexander the Great. And he also shall come to destruction. All right, I'm out.